Alright, so this Blair asks you to swim sort of half Ironman pace, and not easy, not terribly hard. So there's a little bit of a scissor kick with that right leg as it kicks really, high up. It's not terrible, but it's not ideal. It's when you it's sort of random, honestly. It's not tied to a turning to breathe. If it's tied to anything, it's tied to when your left arm's going forward. So be aware that your right leg is kicking up and out a bit. Strokes. That's the big part, right? When I was watching you warm up, it seems to me that you may not be pushing all the way through. So the push part of the stroke is not the strongest part, but it still counts. So there could be some room for improvement on the push phase of the stroke. Your extension with both arms, your extension and rotation is good. The underwater catch we'll see better with the camera, but you've got more of a right straight arm with the right arm and a bit of a pull under your torso with the left arm. So improving those, is going to help. Another thing to point out is that your feet are still a little inflexible, so you want to work on ankle flexibility.
All right, so this is prior to any feedback in the lesson. Both arms sort of very straight-armed. And I think the other thing we noticed was that you seem to exit the stroke early, or you finish a little early. Your hand turns in towards your torso in the second half of that push phase of the stroke. So that's an area where you could potentially get more immediate return if you really work on that push phase, keeping that hand flat to the rear wall as far as humanly possible. A little bit of a scissor kick going on with the right foot, where it comes out a little high. And that's not something I would, the left foot. It's not something I would spend a tremendous amount of time. I know ankle flexibility for you is something we've discussed, getting those ankles a little looser so that you are able to deliver more thrust from the foot. The problem with your kick is that your toes are sort of pointed down, and it's not terrible, but it's not as good as it could be.
So we talked about the push phase of the stroke, or keeping your hand flat to the back wall through the latter half of the pull. Your hand was turning inward towards your torso, and you were exiting the water a little early on the finish. So when you do this, and you're doing a good job here, as you push longer, you want to continue the extension or a slight glide with the leading arm, right? Because if you start pulling that arm back too quickly, all of a sudden your stroke is all off kilter and you're going to get chopped up. So there's a extension aspect to the push phase. This looks better. Your timing comes down a little, right? It's a slower stroke rate, but it's a more effective stroke. I'm going to say that looks pretty good. I did not time it though.
We had you focus on the finish, or the push phase of the stroke. So doing a complete stroke, not exiting the water early, and doing the best you can to keep your hands from turning inward or rotating towards your torso in the second half of the stroke. The hand rotation, there's still a little bit of that going on. You're doing a better job of pushing all the way through. So the thought or the feeling should be pressure on the palm of the hand through the entirety of the stroke. I know it's sort of a split mind that you have to think about extension and catch on one side, and you're thinking about the hand push on the other side. That's why you do a bunch of drills. The sculling drill that we had you do, not the easiest thing in the world, but it certainly is helpful. But you're doing better here. I mean, you can compare this to the previous round and see that you're pushing through more. So one arm drill had you, don't recall if we had you focus on the push phase or just working on the catch here. Yeah, this looks like we had you focus on the push, or following all the way through, because you're doing a good job of that on this. So one arm drill is very versatile in the sense that you can focus on your extension, you can focus on your catch, you can focus on pushing all the way through. You could use a pull buoy with this if you would like, or fins, anything that helps you keep your body in a proper position. But yeah, doing a good job on this one. Alright, here's the sculling. So what you're doing here is not bad, but you're doing more of a complete sort of underwater stroke, and definitely getting the push, which is the focus. On the return, we talked about you don't have to extend your hands forward. You just bring them back to like the midpoint and then push back. So it's very much a rhomboid, tricep, upper back exercise. The other thing that could help would be getting some swim cords and doing some dry land work where you focus on the technique. Yeah, this is another one where using a pull buoy or fins would be helpful, just so you can keep those legs up. But you're doing it correctly. And if you did a couple laps of this, you would feel it. Your triceps would really start to feel worn out. Alright, this is catch focus, high elbow, early vertical forearm. And your left arm definitely is getting good, better. At the end I had some freeze frames, or still frames, and you could see a definite catch angle. The right arm, for whatever reason, just not quite as adept at doing that catch motion. This is more of a straight arm pull. Straight arm better than the elbow slip. Keep working on this aspect of it. It really comes from the shoulder, that internal shoulder roll. I think we probably also talked about it's okay if you start the stroke and then, so those are pretty good right there. Sorry about the way the film is jumping around. It's okay if you start the stroke and then initiate the vertical forearm aspect of it a little later, like a foot under the water, instead of trying to get it immediately, which requires a fair amount of flexibility. And then some fun with fists with paddles. So this is a good one to really feel the resistance on your forearm, which you're trying to recruit as much as possible for the EVF. It's a good strength drill in general. So doing pretty good here. Your forearm may be externally rotated a little too much. If you notice that you want that paddle to be parallel to the back wall as much as possible, and you've got a little bit of a counter angle where it's rotated outward. Not the worst thing in the world, but just something to be aware of as you work on the drill. Alright, and here's the still frames, looking at your left arm. Good extension. Both of your extensions are fine, no problems with them. And then start of a good high elbow or early vertical forearm catch. So there's a definite arc to the arm, and you're getting the hand in the right position, forearm almost to the right position, and then just a little tiny bit of that elbow leading the stroke back. But the start of that catch was very good. On the right arm, a little more of what I call straight arm. The upper arm, hand, forearm are all essentially one angle. It's okay for your hand to be externally rotated at the very beginning when your hand enters, but once you start to pull like you're doing here, the hand goes flat to the back wall. So you got a little bit of the angle with your hand, maybe a touch with the forearm, but then the elbow kind of collapses inward and you get a little bit of the elbow leading the stroke back. So that right arm is the trickier one for you.